Hey guys, if you want to listen to Pulp Kitchen ad-free, then head over to our Patreon. You'll get access to this show, plus our brand new exclusive show, Double Take. You'll also get access to the Discord, priority access to have your emails read out on the show, and loads of extra behind-the-scenes content too. Head over to the link in our bio to find out more.
Do you like sweets?
I'm more of a chocolate guy.
Yeah, me neither. I can't eat sweets.
I do eat them.
You like
I'm
Haribo?
not,
I've seen you smash a Haribo
You're
bag.
more of a sort of absolutist on it, whereas I'm preferable. So like chocolate.
What's your go-to chocolate bar? We go to
My favourite bar.
Other brands are available. Whatever.
As in
we
like
say.
a proper bar.
You're craving. Go to the corner shop. You buy.
So long as it isn't just chocolate. To me, the Snickers sits at the top.
Snickers
Sits at the top.
Yeah, okay.
If I'm on a hike, George, I'm skiing. Anything where I need to replenish the glycogen levels.
Yeah.
Snickers, man.
Yeah, of course.
They do their creamy peanut butter ones now as well,
wow.
which are really good. But anyway, in terms of like bar of chocolate, I like a Galaxy. I like a Dairy Milk.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah, Galaxy is very sweet, but I do like the creaminess, the mouthfeel.
Twix at the top for me.
Yeah,
because it's got biscuits.
Can't
inside.
go wrong.
I mean, it's great. And when you get the extra long
Twix
ones as well,
Extra?
Twix Extra is what a Twix used to be. And then inflation confused us and they made us market it
Sorry,
for a
do
high
you know
price.
what, just thinking about corner shop sweet stars, it makes me think about when I was like 17, 18, 19, I used to get the bus all the time. And I remember like before I'd get the bus, I would go to the corner shop, get a Twix, a Snickers, a pack of Hula. I'd get like 3 things, and then I'd sit at the front top of the bus, and I just felt like the king of the world because I had the view, I had my snacks, podcast, and I just loved it. And you just talking about Twixes right now, I'm picturing myself on a bus. Anyway,
Smash it. No, I mean, I could. I mean, and then Mars and stuff. But actually, you saying that has reminded me that in my old job, I remember
the one you just
the
left.
one I just left. Great, good times. But I remember there were a couple of slow afternoons, and I remember thinking, you know what? I know how to kill 20 minutes with the people around me. I thought it was a bit of a slow day, and I just went, what's everyone's favourite biscuit? 20 minutes.
Productivity
gone.
erased.
And maybe
Yeah.
the people are like, well, like, I mean, I like this, I like that. Where do you stand on rich tea? There's that. Rich tea, no. Pathetic.
Chalk.
Insipid
Yeah.
little things. Digestive is like, plain digestive is like a kind of like default level.
I forget that
biscuit.
it's more solid than I think it is.
Digestive?
Yeah, I
yeah.
will never seek out a digestive, but when the moments in time where a digestive comes into my mouth, I'm like, do you know what? That was actually, it really delivered.
It makes me feel like I'm in the 40s, but I'm like, it holds its place. And a chocolate digestive.
Chocolate digestive's fantastic, but you know what a digestive has for itself? It's moist.
Is it moist?
Yes.
I think it's very famously dry.
No, see, the rich tea is dry. To me, the digestive has a fresh digestive.
But it's
Has
soft
a
crumble.
dewiness. It has a real sort of melt around the tongue. It wraps around me. I am a digestive when I put it in my mouth.
It's funny is that I've heard that internationally, in this scenario specifically, Americans find it strange that we have this biscuit called a digestive.
Yeah.
That sounds like medicine. Yeah,
totally,
sounds
yeah.
like a Pepto-Bismol. Like,
You call it a digestive?
Oh, I'd love some digestives. What are you sick?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
You got cramp?
But it's amazing. The elite, as soon as you put chocolate on a digestive, elite tier, straight up. And I keep them in the fridge, as we've talked about before.
yeah.
You must do.
We've covered.
We've covered that. We've covered that. But top 3 biscuits, I'm
love
going to tell you right
bourbon.
now. Oh, Bourbon is up
Bourbon's
there.
so good.
You've
Bourbon's
named 2 of the
custard
top.
creams. Yeah.
Custard creams also great, but Bourbons as well, and to dunk.
And they remind me of, they're the school biscuit. When schools put out biscuits for the kids, it's like going back to the 1930s and going to our World War II bunker shelter from the air raid, but we've got a little pack of Bourbon biscuits on a plate.
Yeah.
Like whenever you had to do like a tutor thing or something special, a little plate with a custard cream and a Bourbon, I was absolutely thrilled.
Viennese fingers, I like Viennese sandwiches.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
They're
they're
nice.
not
But
bad.
my favourite biscuit, which when I told my colleagues this, going back to that time, I had a conversation with my colleagues, they disagreed, was shortbread. For me,
I don't like it.
No. Now, the reason shortbread is the elitist biscuit, and it is the king of biscuits, is because very, very simple ingredients. And I know that if I have a hankering for some biscuits and I go down the shops and I buy a pack of shortbread, the ingredients that they make the shortbread with in the shop are the same you would make it at home.
Yeah.
Very simple. It's butter, sugar, wheat, and
Don't
milk.
look at the ingredients on a chocolate digestive.
Exactly.
It's not chocolate.
So it's like
wheat.
if you want to be naughty, but you don't want to feel bad for it, a shortbread is perfect. And they're so robust, that's a triple dunker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's hearty.
It's
you know what I
hearty.
really like, and I can't tell if it's a bar or a biscuit, but a penguin.
Wow,
I
that's
love
school.
a
That's taking you
penguin.
back to school.
I eat them all the time.
With the jokes, the terrible jokes.
Yeah,
in the
with the
back.
jokes. It's essentially a bourbon dunked in, like, covered in chocolate, but it doesn't have the flavor profile of a
You're
bourbon.
right.
But it's biscuit, cream,
They've-
biscuit, and wrapped in
It's
chocolate.
like they've outsourced the production of the bourbon inside to like a warehouse somewhere in a far-flung country.
And they're Tim Tams in Australia and a lot of the rest of the world.
Tams.
They are just penguins, but I got to say I prefer the flavor of the penguin. I've had Tim Tams, I hear you, and there's something sort of chemically about the taste, but I know people feel very fondly about Tim Tams.
I would say of the kind of that, the Kit Kat I think is also a king level
solid,
biscuit. If I
yeah.
couldn't get a Twix, it's the biscuitiness inside of it. A chunky or a regular.
Yeah,
it's
I
fine
once
for me.
was in a green room with master chocolatier Paul A. Young, and he like did this amazing like demo. He like made what's it called when you stretch hot chocolate out on a cold surface? Something. It's like really proper when you do chocolate really properly.
Sure.
We're in the green room, and I just went up to him and I was like, "When you go to a corner shop, what'd you get?" And he said Kit Kat.
Ah, well,
He said
there you
Kit
go.
Kat. He said because he eats chocolate every day, he literally makes chocolate every day. He's like, I do find it hard to eat chocolate outside of that context for his own health, and also he's really sensitive to the taste of chocolate and what it's doing, and he does find commercial chocolate like it's overly sweet
as you
and
would,
it's
yeah.
got sort of all sorts of
He's a
chemicals in
chocolate
it.
sommelier.
Yeah, but he said he'll go for a break it in half, four finger Kit Kat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Which they don't wrap in foil anymore, which is very sad. They just do them in plastic, like a sealed plastic.
Is that for the environment?
I don't know. I don't know why. I just don't know that's the case.
If your tummy's rumbling, we apologise, but welcome to episode 138 of Pulp Kitchen. Full disclosure, we are recording this a bit ahead of time, and a little bit out of sync with other episodes. So if you send in emails about any recent things we've discussed,
Stand by.
we might not be able to read it out on this. We might not have it in here, but this is going to be another editorial episode, the completion of the trilogy of best of decades so far.
And I really like to think of it as a trilogy because the 3 decades we'll have covered, 2010s, noughties, 90s, are decades that you and I have been alive for. And thematically, when I look at the visual language of film, those 3, at a stretch, feel more visually aligned to me and thematically aligned. Whereas I feel like once we go into the 80s and 70s, those 2 for me feel much more paired and will sit more as a separate series of podcast analysis to these ones.
Yes, it will be different the way we analyse this. But before we get into it, we'll just say as an overview, because it is the furthest amount of time away that we've done this,
Yes.
the era is the furthest away. It's almost, I found it one of the most enjoyable decades to look into because I feel like the films have settled into the canon of what's great and what's not. It's much easier to separate what's a classic and what's not and what stands out.
You know, there's a number of times we talk about films from the 2010s, and I'll be like, I can't tell if that's still good. You know, sometimes we'll say
yes.
that, I'll be like, yes, I have fond memories of it, but then something about it goes in your mind, and we're like, does that age well? Is that now cheesy? But you're right, the dust has settled on it. We can go.
They've been through.
There's a good film.
Films in the 90s have been popular, fallen out of favour, and come back again
Yes.
in enough time. So it's like when you've watched something a few times, the good, robust, faded genes.
Yes, brilliant.
Broken in. So we'll be doing that today, and we'll have emails as well, and a sound game. My turn to put you in the hot seat today. I think I've got some interesting ones.
Nice.
Slightly trickier from a span of the decades. I
love
did think
that.
about trying to do all 90s ones, but actually I
Yeah.
went the opposite way.
Great. So just sound game.
So just the regular
Yeah.
sound game, but I've spanned for decades.
Fantastic.
I hope everyone's having a wonderful summer.
Chocolate fingers. Love
Yes.
chocolate fingers.
Yeah.
Where I eat the whole tray.
That's-
I don't like pull out
Yeah,
the
you
tray
can't
a little
have
bit,
one, no.
Rip it open, just
I
me and
very much associate that with like the last day at school of the term.
Yeah.
Like you just, someone would bring in a tray of chocolate fingers.
mini eggs
Just
before
shove them
the
in.
Easter holidays. The form
Mini
teacher
eggs?
would always come in
Oh.
with, the tubes. Everyone gets a tube
Yeah.
of mini eggs. It's great. It's getting a little bit warmer.
Yeah, they're
Mini
like
eggs.
crack. And
They're really
especially, I know not to repeat the conversation, but especially of all things to put in the fridge, mini eggs, because the crack of that shell.
That'll give you.
That's
Did you ever
fantastic.
make chocolate nests for Easter where you get Rice Krispies?
Oh, did I?
And you melt chocolate, and then you nest like 3 little Easter mini eggs in there. Fantastic snack.
It is
and then you get to lick
quite
the bowl when it's warm.
concerning, the amount of sugar that we consumed as children. We could probably process sugar better now as adults, but we eat far less sugar.
And we'd get like trays of them.
Yeah.
And I just melt like massive bars of chocolate.
Also, just
Sorry,
I know we started
completely back to
and
this.
we also started talking about sweets. I don't like sweets at all. I
Yeah,
don't eat
so
Haribo.
you
I'm
said
very absolute
really
about it.
not.
But the one thing I do like, and I often take with me to the cinema, and I pop it in my mouth as soon as the BBFC logo comes up, is a Werther's original.
Original, yeah.
I love a Werther's original.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you like those?
So
Have you
I
had those?
like what you do with fridge chocolate. I love with fizzy sweets. So I like.
You put it in the fridge.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So no, not the fridge, George. The freezer. So what a ritual we do on holiday is we'll buy like a pack of fizzy gummy bears or Tang Fastics. We just pop them in the freezer, and you know that part of the holiday where you've been out in the sun all day and you've had your shower. You get a frozen Tang Fastic or frozen gummy bears, which you can get in the US, but not so much here. And you put that in your mouth, and it's cold and sugary, and then it melts on your tongue, and then you get to it's more just a whole much more of an experience in the mouth.
We need to get like, yeah. Well, anyway, that's.
We would talk about the news, the Euros, Deadpool and Wolverine, but all those things are happening this week, and we don't know if we won, lost the Euros, or if Deadpool and Wolverine was amazing or terrible.
There's lots of things that are yet to happen when we're recording this. So let's get on. Let's go back to the 90s with the best movies of the 90s. So James, we asked, the people answered. We asked on the Discord, we asked on Patreon, and then we asked on our Instagram, and the inbox flooded, like that scene in Harry Potter where the letters come through the post, it's just like, no post on Sundays.
It's a great survey. It's better than an email list. It's just great.
Every time we do one of these, we are inundated with films that we have often talked about on the show, but it's just a reminder that you go, it's nice to see what a consensus opinion is. I would like to begin, though, with one year in particular. So we're recording this the week that I turn 30, and James turns 30 in 2 months' time as well, very close in age there. And therefore, I'm thinking about 1994. And I want to talk about 1994 because there's a very interesting Oscar category for that year. So the Oscars were held in 95, but obviously reflecting the films that came out in 94. So in the Best Picture category for 1994, the winner, Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Which only a few people suggested in their responses to this question. Forrest Gump.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm happy
very
to say
watchable.
I like it.
Very
I don't
watchable.
think it's one of the great films of all time, but I think it's incredibly watchable and fun.
I think also it's a little bit, you wince a little bit at how overly stupid the whole drawl and thing of Forrest Gump as a character is.
It wouldn't happen today.
No, but I do love the way they've gone, do you want to see 40 years of American history condensed into 2.5 hours? Sure, I love that.
Met the president again.
Shut me in the buttocks. Yeah. No, I had a colleague who would always say the line, Mama said they were my magic shoes.
You know, Tom Hanks talked about he once encountered this like 9-year-old boy in Alabama who spoke in this like he would have a voice and it would go on in my mama, and he was just completely enraptured by this, and it became the staple voice for Forrest Gump.
Oh, I
was
see.
like the bouncy Alabama.
Bounce to Bama. Another film that was the second film that was nominated that year, which I was surprised for a Best Picture film, was 4 Weddings and a Funeral. When was the last time we saw a rom-com nominated for Best Picture? That was obviously a huge hit that year as well, which obviously propels it, always puts it in the kind of category for Best Pictures. But Hugh Grant probably solidified as a major star. 4 Weddings.
Do you know what? I watched it, I want to say around 2013, 2014.
Oh, wow.
Liked it, but I wasn't, maybe it was a moment in time I wasn't really there for it. I thought, oh, that's cute, I get it.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I don't have fond memories of it.
I think I prefer Notting Hill much more.
Way more.
I think Julia Roberts is a lot stronger than Andy McDowell. And also Andy McDowell has that god-awful line in, Is It Raining? I hadn't noticed.
Andy McDowell's not the best actor.
I'm sorry to say that.
Even in, what's her face, Groundhog Day. She's a bit...
Oh, yeah.
She's a bit like... She's fine.
Margaret Qualley, her daughter, is a very good actor.
Very good, yeah.
I really like her.
Really
the third film, iconic, and of course, we have talked about it a lot, but it is really important to mention this because I would say this between 3 films, this was one of the main films that people said in their responses,
the one.
was Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
And
The film as old as us.
I rewatched it last year. I did a little bonus thing on it, and I just want to say, like, it still slaps.
Yeah.
It is still so refreshing and exciting. And the thing is with Pulp Fiction, I think it's easy to forget because it's such a classic, and that people kind of get used to thinking about it. Is that, you know, there's this line in the thick of it I often think about where they say, "Oh, you're just like one of those people who think cinema began with Tarantino,"
Yeah.
and people kind of eye roll when people overpraise Pulp Fiction because they think, "Oh, you know, it's very film bro," or your love of cinema came from there. But I think we forget that it was so refreshing and different, but also it was a major hit that reminded people that there is a huge history of film out there, and not just prestigious film cinema. What the influences that Pulp Fiction is drawing on and Tarantino draws on is the kind of schlockier, lower down, less prestigious types of cinema, the kung fu movies, the crime thrillers, the exploitation movies. That there is this whole, to quote what we were just talking about with Biscuits, flavor profile of cinema out there that he quite very, very well distills into this main hit. And it is iconic. When I watched it again last year, I was just like, the visuals of it, the costumes, the characters, the dialogue, the soundtrack, all of it is there. And I would have loved to have seen that for the first time with I would love to have seen that at Cannes, having heard nothing
Just
about
a reaction to it.
and just think, what is this? And the elliptical, you know, non-narrative, non-chronological structure is so refreshing. Like, it's still, and I'm still very proud to say that's still one of my favorite films of all time.
I think it's important to not sneer at the film bro poster culture that Pulp Fiction is attached to, because I really think that film and fans of that film should be proud of the fact that it is probably one of the biggest gateway drugs for people to expand their enthusiasm around film. It's non-linear structure and it's very deliberate and intentional pacing. I think it's almost like a before and after moment for a lot of people who watch films. It changes the way you look at films. It shows you that you can make and write films and watch and enjoy films in a very different way than, for example, when you watch a Spielberg film. Both are very different, but it doesn't mean that, like Jurassic Park's film I get onto, which I think has such a brilliant 3-act structure. Neither one takes away from the other, but that's an amazing thing that film can be such a keystone for so many film fans.
And I think it really energized actually people's imagination with what cinema could do as well if you wanted to be in cinema, if you wanted to work in it. Because the 90s, just for sort of context, is the second wave boom of independent filmmaking, low budget independent filmmaking. And like, slightly tainted now in hindsight, but Miramax was a huge thing, involvement in that, and Miramax is involved in Pulp Fiction. And I think, it's that reminder that Tarantino, yes, he'd made Reservoir Dogs, but was still a newcomer. He'd used to work in a video store. He'd written this with Roger Avery, again an unknown, and a bit similar with Good Will Hunting, with what happened with Affleck and Damon, which we'll probably mention later on. It's this kind of moment of, it's a watershed moment that for a new generation of people that go, cinema is actually really, really cool.
And technology making it more, like catching up and making it more available. Like you look at like Clark's from Kevin Smith and that like real guerrilla filmmaking of like, we maxed out, he's talked about, I maxed out every single credit card on my account, my friend's account, my parents' account to buy a camera, shoot it in this way. They shot in black and white because they couldn't light it.
That's right. And I would say Clerks. I thought it was like,
probably it is.
But you are right in that, like in English, you would see Clerks.
Yeah, they would say Clerks.
But have you seen it?
Yeah,
and it's got the shutters down because they had to film it at night. And there's the whole thing about raw,
shot over a very long
budget.
time.
And actually, you mentioned Andie MacDowell. She was in like this actually came out in 1989, but a film called Sex, Lies and Videotape, Steven Soderbergh movie, which is kind of seen as like the beginning of like independent films booming in the 90s. Great book called Down and Dirty Pictures by Peter Biskind, if anyone wants to read about that era. But Pulp Fiction is still an all-time great, and it still works. It still slaps.
I should rewatch it because we named our podcast after it.
When was the last time you saw it?
Last time I saw it would have been...
Which is the crucial question.
Not 100% sure. It's been like over 5 years.
Oh, then
so it's due.
5-year rule, James.
Yeah,
it exists for a reason.
It's ready. I think I need to go through a select, like you did, I want to say like 2 years ago, like a select few Tarantino that I want to rewatch fill in my Tarantino gaps.
So my big one I need to rewatch is Jackie Brown. I've seen every other Tarantino like a dozen times, but I need to rewatch that one because people do hold that up. And yes, it's different. It's based on a pre-existing novel, so he didn't, he adapted it. Oh, I might also try Death Proof again as well because I think that's sort of changed over time. The fourth film nominated in this category is, again, a film we've touched on a lot of times, The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Which you talk about gateway drugs for Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, I feel like The Shawshank Redemption is the first great film that they watch. It's like the first time, it was for me, when I was like 13, I watched it, I was like, oh, this is an amazing movie.
A film, sir. Yeah, we talked about the effect of it was so many people's favourite film.
Yeah.
Sits still at the top of the internet lists that collate the best film, or maybe like the most public voted best favourite films of all time. Iconic poster.
I think it's easy for, there's this always debate around it. It's like, well, is it as good as it thinks? And I'm saying, don't overthink it, guys. If it works, it works. It reminds me, I was listening to an episode of Brett Goldstein's podcast. He was talking with Stephen Merchant about how films can move you, and this idea, this sort of weird cynicism that people have around anything that's regarded as sentimental or like emotional, even though like there's a lot of darkness in Shawshank Redemption. And Brett Goldstein was making this point that it is so hard to make a film. And, 90 minutes ago, you didn't know these characters. And now 90 minutes hence, you're actually being moved and profoundly moved by their experiences. Like, that is not something to be sniffed at. That's amazing. So I think about that with Shawshank. I'm like, that takes you on such a journey, and it really compels you in with the drama, that for people to go, it's a bit, like honeydewed and slightly sentimental, I think, no, it's a great fucking movie. Andy Dufresne crawled through a river of shit and came out clean on the other side. What a line. We sat and drank in the sun with the sun dancing on our shoulders like free men. Brilliant.
It's really great, yeah.
Frank Darabont didn't really, he had an interesting career as well. He went on to make The Green Mile. A lot of people like The Green Mile. I don't hold it up quite as highly.
I've not seen The Green Mile.
It's not so good. I mean, it's not as good. It's all right. But the reason I wanted to mention this category, this era, because there's a fifth film in this category. All those other films there are still very famous. Shawshank, Pulp Fiction, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and Forrest Gump still get circulated a lot. But there's a fifth film in that category that I want to draw people's attention to because it's an underrated movie called Quiz Show. You ever heard of it?
No,
ever seen
heard of it? No.
So this is a Robert Redford movie. He directed it, not starred in it. He directed it, starring Ralph Fiennes, John Turturro, and also Martin Scorsese's in it in a regular kind of in an acting role, more than one scene.
Oh, brilliant.
And I caught up with this a few years ago, and I thought it's about time I watched this fifth film in this very good year of nominees. And Quiz Show is a really good, really solid, underrated movie from that time. Great young Ralph Fiennes in it, and sort of handsome time. It's set in the 1950s. It's based on a true story about a quiz show scandal where essentially, I think it was NBC, they fixed the contest on air, but the reason. They fixed it and it was big scandal. And they would let sort of Ralph Fiennes' character win, but the reason it's interesting what Redford digs into is that there's a deeper level of the fact that Ralph Fiennes was like a preppy, waspy, intellectual, New England old money type, pretty boy, and the guy who was doing very well called Herbert Stemple, played by John Turturro, was Jewish. Immigrant family, and it became this thing where they threw Herbert Stemple under the bus to make Ralph Fiennes' character look better, and this idea of his anti-Semitism, and then bringing forward a certain vision of America wrapped up in kind of like very, very beautiful 50s rapping. It's interesting. It's a really solid movie, and it's kind of Redford keeps it on the right side of that line before it gets to being like the truth matters and being honest matters. It has kind of like big liberal credentials like that, but I check it out. It's a solid movie amongst those other great hits.
Worth acknowledging some great action from the 90s. Yes. So probably my favourite action film is The Matrix.
Now, The Matrix, I would say, up there with Pulp Fiction as the most one of the most named films. And I saw a clip. It's funny with The Matrix. We've seen it loads of times.
Loads of times. I had the DVD.
And I saw a clip of it on, I think it might have even just been on TikTok the other day, and I just thought that film is so good. And I think I've always held it as a great action movie, but I'm like, no, it really is in many ways what people want from cinema, which is great spectacle, great ideas, great drama.
So smart as well.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing, as a hero's journey, which it is, but I don't think you should take away from that. The moments in those films that really, really work. My favourite moment is when he decides not to run from Agent Smith in the subway scene. And Morpheus, and at a point, there's such a high concept of like, they're in the real world and he's in the Matrix and they're watching the lines of code, but they understand it. And it's like, what is he doing? And Lawrence Fishburne's like, he is beginning to believe. And he turns and faces this villain that has been so well established throughout the entire film as being way too powerful. There is no way to stop an agent. They'll punch through concrete to get through you. And then equally, the 10-minute scene where Morpheus tells Neo the truth of what the real world is, I think is so brilliantly delivered and edited.
Yes.
The execution of essentially the entire concept of the war, of the real truth, to turn a human being into this. Just fantastic. We've talked about this before. That film released at the perfect time. Dawn of the new millennium. What are computers? What is the internet? What is hacking? How is this interfacing between software and stuff? It's still relevant today. What we see in front of us, is it real? Is it simulation? It's just fantastic.
And that idea of blue pill, red pill really stays with me. And I often think about that. There's sometimes I see people in life, or if I know people, I'm like, yeah, you're a blue pill person. You're not prepared to take the risks.
Start a podcast, bro.
Yeah, you need to be a red pill. You need to wake up and see how deep the rabbit hole
And very
goes.
relatable, someone who floats their way through life, sleeping in, has a corporate job, a soulless corporate job, being yelled at by their boss. You have a problem with authority, Mr. Anderson. And he's not focused, he's distracted, like the windows.
Yeah, and there's sort of that horrible sickly green, corporate green colour they paint the real world.
The grade
in.
of that film
is
the
really,
green
grade
really
of
good, yeah.
But that's the clip I actually saw on TikTok, was the subway fight, and I was looking at the choreography of that fight.
Fantastic.
It's so, and the sound design of every. It's brilliant movie. And I had the pleasure, I think I've probably said this before, but I had the pleasure 3 years ago when I last watched it, of showing it to Anna, who'd never seen it before.
Oh, fantastic.
And watching her watch that film for the first time was incredible, because when Morpheus is telling Neo about what happened, she was leant forward
I can't believe
on
it.
the sofa, just like, and we paused it halfway through, and she just went, "This came out in 1999.
Yeah.
Just like, I cannot believe how advanced this was.
You know what's also incredibly overwhelming and just wildly difficult to comprehend is the moment when he does take the red pill and he he touches the mirror and the metal goes all over him and it goes inside his mouth and then he falls down this void into a tank and he wakes up in a Bacta tank of his own goo with trillions of other humans all being harnessed for energy. I'm like, what am I watching? And it still looks great. It still looks really good. And then he wakes up and he's like, he's been born and he's got all these holes in himself. And he goes back into the Matrix like, those holes you have in your body are gone. This is what's called your residual self-image.
I would really love, I'm sure they do it, but I would love to see that on IMAX.
Oh yeah,
because I don't, a lot of this is the thing with films from the 90s, because we've grown up with them, we've not seen them on the big screen. Yeah. Very rarely. If you get to catch a re-release, but I would love to go and see.
When we did Naughties in 2010s, we had specific memories of going to the cinema to see these, whereas for this decade, we were 6 in 2000. Yeah. So chances are we have no memories of going to see these films, but just brilliant.
An absolute all-time. That was mentioned. I would also like to give a shout out to someone who's a staple, someone we are big fans of on this show, and this is without doubt Jim Carrey's decade, right? I just wrote a list of the films that he did in actually basically like a 5-year period, because he didn't really. His year was 1994. We just talked about 94, but. Dumb and Dumber, The Mask. I don't think we talk about The Mask, you and I.
No.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, but I'm talking like when I was a kid.
Oh, that was I used to rewatch that a lot.
So I have a very strange memory of it because I don't think I'm understanding that Jim Carrey's doing his Jim Carrey thing. I watched it with a very this is a strange man, and it probably washed over me.
Do you know what? The Mask, I watched it a lot when I was younger. The bit where he comes in with the maracas with all the police. Do you remember it, with the police surround him?
I don't remember.
And he tries to get out of it. He puts the mask on and he gets the maracas. He goes, "My name is Cuban Pete," and he chick chicka boom chick chick. When he gets the whole police crew to dance, really kind of like naff and cringe, but so funny. And Cameron Diaz in that movie, she is in that movie. Liar Liar, Dumb and Dumber, and then also B-roll Carrey that era, Batman Forever as the Riddler. Go and listen to Carrey talk about how Tommy Lee Jones that he hated Jim Carrey, hated him, and
I think. He was probably really annoying.
Oh, probably, yeah.
To have on set when you're trying to do something very particular with your role and Jim Carrey is just exploding in the scene. How can you focus on anything? How is anything you do going to matter when Jim Carrey is there as the Riddler in a green suit? Yeah.
And then also The Cable Guy. A film I've not seen, but it's a Ben Stiller movie that's been quite dark. And I think a lot of people have actually revisited it and say it holds up quite well. But The Truman Show, one of my all-time favourites. And then that transition of Carrey into doing drama, brilliant, still brings this kind of energy, but also like the vulnerability, the sadness that he carries as Truman Burbank in that film.
It's a stunning film as well, the look of it, and it just really delivers. Everything about the ending of that film, I think, is so well placed and so rewarding. The final conversations had, I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it, but those final conversations with those characters and the decision to move and do what he does, I just think is so good.
We talked about, when we did, I think, our favourite individual scenes and moments in film 2 years ago, one of them for me was The Truman Show. Well, there's actually 2 moments in it, but the one in the middle with the bus, and he holds up his hand, and they use this Philip Glass song, and it's when he's starting to realize, he's starting to believe. It's just so powerful. And then there's a thing at the end with the sky. I'm trying to talk around it in case you haven't seen it, which is so moving.
And also on Jim Carrey, if you haven't seen the great Jim Carrey documentary, Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, it is very good at covering this, most of Jim Carrey's career, but specifically this very successful era of Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Man on the Moon is the other film he did.
And like I think that documentary, I'm convinced they didn't know what they were going to get with Jim Carrey, and they were so blessed that Jim Carrey spoke about his career in that way. He talks about depression. He talks about success in the most wonderful, articulate way that you could ever imagine. It's somebody who's really been at the height of it, come out the other side, redefined who he is. And it's just, he's a very brilliant communicator, Jim Carrey. So definitely, it's on Netflix, isn't it? It's a Netflix doc.
Yeah, Jim and Andy.
Check it out. Check that out.
I also, similar to Jim Carrey, who is just absolute. I mean, when I was younger, I really did idolize him. I remember watching The Mask and Ace Ventura, just seeing how rubbery he was, and just like wanting to have that in the playground. But a predecessor to Jim Carrey is Robin Williams, who's fantastic.
I love Robin Williams.
You know, it's 10 years ago since he died. This August.
I remember exactly where I was when I found out, and I remember being really sad for the rest of the day.
So it was heartbreaking.
Really, really sad.
But what I used to think of Robin Williams as the sort of predecessor to Jim Carrey because he had hits beforehand. But actually, some of Robin Williams' best films were in the 90s. So Mrs. Doubtfire,
fantastic.
Jumanji, Flubber, Aladdin, Hook, and Good Will Hunting. And
phenomenal.
You know, Good Will Hunting, a film I really, really am keen to rewatch. Anna watched it quite recently without me, and she said it was really powerful. And I think it's a lot of people's favorite films, actually.
Good Will Hunting is great. I also give Hook's one of my underrated picks. I really
Same
think
with
Hook
Anna,
is massively slept on. There's a really great scene. If you don't know, Peter Pan grew up. Wendy also grew up, but Wendy remembers everything, and she's played by Maggie Smith, who's now in her 80s. Hook comes back to kidnap Peter Pan's kids, and he's completely forgotten everything about who he is. He's a fat old lawyer who's miserable and is corporate. It sounds really dumb, but it totally works. And there's this moment where he goes back in, Tinks grabs him, takes him to Neverland. He's overweight, and Captain Hook has his kids and refuses to believe that Peter Pan doesn't remember anything, and he can't fly. And he's terrified of heights, and he's on this beam, and he's reaching out to his kids, and his kids are begging him, like, please save us, help. And he's like, I can't do it. And he's like, please. And he's reaching out, he's like, please, mommy could do it. And it's the best end. Spielberg loves acts. It's the end of your first act. Your hero's at his lowest point. Now he has to go find the Lost Boys, get all his power. It's like a video game. Get all of his powers back and go back to fight Captain Hook. It's so good. Robin Williams, as always, delivers.
I've not seen it, but I know it's very
also
celebrated.
Wonderful practical special effects and sets, like hand-painted things sticking out of everywhere, really detailed and lived in. Like the Lost Boys territory in that film is just brilliant. I wanted to explore that so much as a kid. It was like the ultimate fantasy of like treehouse forts and armor and swords. It was just perfect. Spielberg capturing a child's imagination is just always spot on.
There's also an underrated Robin Williams film I want to give a shout out, which I only watched about 6 months ago, called The Birdcage. The Birdcage. Have you seen The Birdcage?
No, but I know the film. Yeah.
So The Birdcage is based off of Le Cage aux Folles, the famous musical, and it's got Robin Williams, Nathan Lane, Gene Hackman. The basic premise is that Robin Williams lives in Miami, runs a nightclub with his partner Nathan Lane, but Robin Williams has a son from earlier in his life who's grown up, and he comes to Robin Williams and says, oh, by the way, I've fallen in love and I'm getting married. Her parents are like, her dad is like a Republican, super conservative senator. Anyway, long story short, lots of farcical things. The Republican senator's on the run, or like it's having to escape a scandal, and it all builds towards the Republican parents coming to meet this gay couple who own the gay nightclub in Miami. This complete clash of politics and ideas. And what is so interesting about it is that Robin Williams underplays the whole thing. He's not the mad funny one in it. Nathan Lane is the eccentric funny one in this, and he's so fun. Nathan Lane is such a talent. Anyway, so brilliant, and it's so interesting to watch Robin Williams pull back and let his co-star get the praise. But it's a really funny film, and it builds this very play-like farcical third act where you've got Hank Azaria as like the servant coming in, and really, really good.
Because you could say this for both Robin Williams and Jim Carrey, where people would look at them and go, oh, they just do that very loud over the top thing. And it's like, no, look at most of their filmography and you can see that they're able to do the complete opposite really well. And it's the contrast of it is what works. Even in The Truman Show, like there are moments where he really goes for it, but he's very controlled, very measured. Yeah. Oh, there it is. There's that beetle. Yeah, so good. Anyway.
So that was Robin Williams. I just wanted to, you mentioned about action, by the way. Just a couple of other things.
Of other ones in there.
What I love about the 90s is I think it delivers really great, well-executed, big-budget spectacle action. I'm talking just three, examples. The Rock with Nicolas Cage. Con Air with Nicolas Cage. Con Air is like the most 90s.
VHS. Yeah.
Brilliant. Speed.
Die Hards 2 and 3.
Die Hard 2 was 90. You're right, 90. Die Hard 3
is 95.
Yeah, 95. Die Hard 3.
We talked about we like Die Hard 3.
Die Hard. It goes Die Hard 3, then Die Hard 3, and then you're done.
And then then two if you've got the trilogy DVD like I did.
2's all right, like a bridge, but you really don't need 2. I like Die Hard 3 works really well.
You know when you used to buy DVDs like before a holiday?
Yeah.
I remember like in the airport, I bought the Die Hard trilogy. I had seen 1, but not 2 and 3. And then for every night that holiday, everyone had gone to bed, but I watched Die Hard 1 the first night, Die Hard 2 the second night, and Die Hard 3 the third night, and I had the best time. And I remember just like seeing how much he'd aged in between the films. It's like, God, I'm really just racking him up. And then I think like a few years later, Die Hard 4.0 came out.
And then A Good Day to Die Hard after that.
Stop. Yeah.
Please stop. I want to just mention a film that actually I think is a really great 5-star film that I don't think we've talked about enough. Maybe it's because you haven't seen it, but that is LA Confidential.
No, not seen it. But it's on my. I have a list of backlog.
Have you played LA Noire?
Yes,
right.
Adore LA Noire.
LA Noire owes a huge amount to LA Confidential. LA Confidential, 1997, a really great movie directed by Curtis Hanson, and it's got a very young Guy Pearce in it with cheekbones that could cut glass.
Yeah.
And the fashion, it's all set in the 50s in Los Angeles. And brilliant. You've got Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe, Danny DeVito, Kevin Spacey, James Cromwell, Kim Basinger. Kim Basinger, not great in it.
I think you did a cast this countdown for this ages ago, yeah.
But it's a really great movie and really sort of, that 1950s kind of noir element to it, but even though it's sort of palm treed and gorgeous, it's a great movie. And there's some moments in it with James Cromwell's character, of real sort of darkness and the couple of lines. I'm glad I now know that you haven't seen it because I would have done for the sound game.
Oh, great.
But definitely check that out. And I'll just kind of do 2 more underrated films. 2 more underrated films I just want to give a shout out to was one is Copland, which I did a little thing on a few months ago, like a little bonus special, which is if you like, there are lots of great crime movies, but if you want a really solid crime movie from the 1990s with De Niro, Keitel, Ray Liotta, Sylvester Stallone, probably the best Sylvester Stallone performance I've ever seen, watch Copland. I also want to give a shout out to David Fincher's The Game. Everyone talks about Fight Club and Seven. I'm not a huge fan of Fight Club, but Seven comes out this year.
Fantastic.
Really, Seven, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. When we talked about Longlegs a few weeks ago, like that was, I think that was an influence there. But The Game is this really interesting film with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. And the opening credits are just like the ones from Succession. It's actually really bizarre. And it's about this sort of thing where you agree to take part in a game, but then you're not sure what's real and what's not, and weird things start happening in your life. And sort of Michael Douglas is put at the heart of this game, but he doesn't know when he should be playing, what he's not playing. But it builds to something towards the end that completely surprised me. It's actually quite emotional and quite profound. And you'll think you're watching this kind of thriller, but it lands at this point where you go, oh, this is actually about something so much more deeper about what this character is going through, and it's actually quite brilliant. And it really surprised me watching that. I really, really recommend that.
I'm going to mention one of my favourite films. Probably could be in my top 10, and I mentioned it because I don't think a lot of people who commented mentioned it, and that's A Few Good Men from 1992. Has one of, I think, the best Tom Cruise performances. It is peak Aaron Sorkin courtroom drama. It is just a wicked sharp script. You've got Jack Nicholson, Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon,
Demi Moore,
Cuba Gooding Jr., Demi Moore. A fantastic cast, but the titans of Jack Nicholson at his peak with Tom Cruise is just so good. If you love The Social Network, if you love Trial of the Chicago 7, if you love Steve Jobs, please go and check out A Few Good Men from 1992. It has a wonderful 90s evocative synth, like da-na-na-na-na-na, as the mystery unfolds. I remember I saw a stage version of it with Rob Lowe playing that character.
Wow.
Obviously knows Sorkin very well from West Wing and all of that stuff. And it was a Sorkin, I didn't know this at the time, but it was obviously a Sorkin directed adaptation of A Few Good Men. And it was just brilliant. I loved it. My mum made me watch A Few Good Men like years ago. I think we rented it from a Blockbuster at the time, and I remember just absolutely watched it. I've seen it 10 times.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I've only seen it once, do you know that? And I only saw it for the first time 5 years ago. But a friend of the show, Steve from Florida, every time I see Steve from Florida, at some point he will quote A Few Good Men.
Fantastic.
Did you order a Code Red?
Yeah.
Danger?
Did you order a Code? You're goddamn
Was
right,
the line,
I
is it
did.
like, was he in danger, mortal danger? Is there any other kind?
Yeah.
Like,
You don't want me on that wall. You need me. One of the all-time great Jack Nicholson speeches. And one of my favorite moments is like, it's the younger and more energetic Tom Cruise, where he's not really, part of his character arc is he doesn't really know whether or not he should really engage or really care with something that he's working on. He's very like, whatever, I just do this to make the money. It's military court. What's going to matter anyway? And there's this distinct moment where he says, I'm going to effing go for this. And he delivers this amazing speech, and the music changes. Okay, we're going to go to my house every single night. We're going to work the case. And he really activates, and Demi Moore's really happy to see him engaged. And it just sets the rest of the film off with this amazing tone. Love it, love it, love it.
yeah,
One of my favorites.
Great movie.
Oh, worth acknowledging, 97, Titanic was the highest grossing film for a very, very long time. Specifically, my oldest sister, Natasha, who's 8 years older than me, she was 13 when it came out.
Wow, yeah.
So she talks about that film like it's just, she's like, James, it was huge. It was the biggest film ever. She was at that age where she was a little bit too young for it because it had the sex scenes, but you had like peak Leonardo DiCaprio, who I think almost didn't take the role. Kate Winslet, this 3-hour epic saga, this classic upstairs, downstairs, rich guy, poor boy, rich girl. Famous story. Ended up, she bought the VHS. I remember Natasha getting the VHS and her being so excited to watch it and watch it and watch it. And Titanic, I want to say I rewatched it about over 5 years ago, and it totally got me. It really has a gut punch to it that absolutely works. It really works.
I need to see it. I've never seen it. I've seen clips, and I think we've talked about it before. But like,
they re-released it fairly recently.
I think again. Sorry for repeating myself, but I grew up in an anti-Titanic household.
Yeah, you did say this. Yeah.
My dad was a fan of it, so I've never watched it. The same way my dad was anti-Lord of the Rings, so it just sort of never trickled down. But I will go and watch it. I'm actually excited to rediscover it.
Also, like that 90s Leo aesthetic has really come full circle, and it's just he was always gorgeous, but it's definitely just him with the suspenders and the loose white shirt and the floppy hair. The moment where Rose is lowering down and fireworks are popping behind him, it is impossible not to fall in love with Leonardo DiCaprio. And that film it's 3 hours, just under 3 hours, but at 90 minutes, iceberg hits.
Right.
And you've had the love story, and then you get the iceberg, but obviously it's still a love story. Just so good.
Kate Winslet did a thing recently when she was like rewatching scenes from her career, and she there's a scene when I think they did the King of the World, moment, and she was like, "You don't realize that had to be up on that was on a constructed separate part of the ship that only Leo and her were up there, and James Cameron, and so but they had to get the certain type of sunlight, and they had to get the light. They had to apply particular type of tanning makeup on to get the color right for their faces, but the makeup crew, it would take too long for them to keep coming up to reset. So in that scene, Kate Winslet has the makeup sponges tucked into her dress in the side, and in between takes she would get out and she would apply their own makeup to her and Leo.
And they this all came I was reminded of this recently with the Ocean Gate sub disaster that happened. So James Cameron, the footage you see of the Titanic under the water is actual footage of the Titanic. They went down, I think it's like 4,000 meters or something, to film the Titanic, and he obviously became an expert of going that deep, and it all just came up again. But brilliant. Me and my other sister, always do this thing whenever we like get on a boat. There's this famous line from Rose's mother, who's like super snooty and upper class. She's just like, "Are the lifeboats seated according to class?" And Rose says, "Oh, mother, shut up. Half the people on the ship are going to die." And me and my sister we'll get on a boat, we'll go, "Are the lifeboats seated according to class?" We have fun. Anyway, Titan.
Before I run through like a longer list of people's suggestions,
we're really activated for the 90s, by the way.
We're
like, I'm finding this is more. There's more passion.
There's more passion.
There's more recommendations.
They've been sitting in our cerebral consciousness for longer. I want to give a shout out. Whenever we do these kind of big roundups, even when we do the regular kind of episodes of the show, we always hold our hands up and say we'd love to do more foreign language films and cover more of that. And just by product of the fact that we're both English speaking and English cinema, cinema can be dominated by English speaking languages. We apologize if there's like a paucity or a lack of foreign language films, but one foreign language film that came through a lot is the French film La Haine. Have you ever seen La Haine?
No.
Huge favorite of other people, and it is actually really good. For those who don't know, 1995 movie, all shot in black and white, low budget. Vincent Cassel is like probably in his young 20s, looking all lean and mean. And it is, in many ways, I think it makes an interesting companion piece with something like This Is England, because La Haine means hatred, it means hate, and it's shot in this very severe black and white, so it looks like a very, very mean film, and it begins with footage of riots with a contrasting soundtrack put against it. But it's set over the course of one day and one night with three friends who are living in a poor immigrant neighborhood of Paris, and it's like Vincent Cassel, and then his friend who's African French heritage, and their other friend who is Muslim French heritage, and they kind of navigate the kind of frustrations with the police and the establishment. But what I remember thinking about La Haine that surprised me is that even though on the face of it, it looks really mean, and one of the most circulated images is Vincent Cassel with a buzz cut pointing his finger as a gun in the mirror, it's actually really like tender and about their friendship and their relationship, and like they have a lot of fun on this day, and it's actually quite moving, and it builds to a really interesting ending, and it's one of those films when people say, well, La Haine's like one of my favorite films, or I love La Haine. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. It's stylish, it's bold, it's low budget, but it's got something to say, it's passionate. Go see La Haine if you haven't seen it.
I want to give a shout out to a film which was mentioned a lot, and that's Trainspotting.
Yes.
And particularly because we could talk for a long time about how much we love that film.
With Trainspotting and La Haine, again, independent, low-budget filmaking.
Yeah, and like the other films we've mentioned, all great, but there's a distinctive, very palatable Hollywood sheen to all of them that I think Trainspotting has none of.
Yeah.
And that film's so good at capturing a really distinct moment in time and a slice of British, Scottish culture, which you just don't really see portrayed in other Hollywood. Not only is it hilarious, but it's really wicked, smart, kinetic, fun filmmaking.
I think
I love Trainspotting.
The specific Scottish sense of humour that I mean, obviously Danny Boyle is English,
which you don't get in
Irving
Hollywood.
Welsh is it's that kind of cruel, very funny,
sarcastic, dark,
humour,
morbid,
and
which you don't, to this day, I don't think is properly captured in Hollywood.
I
thought T2 is actually really solid, but
Trainspotting is the film is such a roller coaster. I remember thinking that you really are taking ups and downs from moments of like bawdy comedy,
it's
and gross out humour, and then really dark moments of pain and death, and
just always shot in a really interesting way, like just the way in which they frame, for example, like the period where he goes through withdrawal and he moves back in with his parents, and how the room is like this amorphosized, elongated version of it.
Like a fun house, isn't it?
Yes, like a fun house, like they're small and big, and it's all of it is just evocative and brilliant. It's really good.
One of the best needle drops of all time, Born Slippy by Underworld.
Fantastic. And I think that they used that song really well in T2.
Yes. I never thought I would find the chords of Born Slippy emotionally triggering.
They like deconstructed the stems and used it as this tool for nostalgia, and they really played on the fact that these films were made 20 years apart and the audience are 20 years older, and it's surprising. I've only seen it once, T2, but I stand by it.
It's good. It's not. I mean, it can't be.
It's not as good as one, but I was ready to really dislike it, and I thought, you know what, that's actually quite an interesting commentary on culture now compared to how it was.
I actually think also Trainspotting makes a really good companion piece with Requiem for a Dream in terms of how you make addiction entertaining, but also the kind of different perception of it, because Requiem for a Dream is just this downward slope, descent into hell, whereas Trainspotting captures, true to addiction, the elation and euphoria and best time of your life you're having, and then the steep, sheer drops you have in between. Not that I'm an addict or ever have been. Let's just run through some of the longer lists, if I may, and just sort of give quick fire reaction to them. So, of course, the best sleepover movie there is, The Mummy.
Which just recently celebrated its 25th anniversary. We really have fond memories of The Mummy. It's a fantastic family-friendly adventure film. Great performance from Brendan Fraser. So many fantastic, overly dramatic moments which don't feel out of place. It has almost like a Heart of Darkness descent into the dark parts of the Egyptian desert into Amanaptra. It just works. It's really really good.
And good.
I was scared of it when I watched it as a
And
kid.
good CGI with Emotep.
Yes,
for the
with
era.
Emotep. For the second one, the Scorpion King is famously
rough.
one of the worst
Yes.
ever. But yes,
For the first one.
the practical effects and the way in which he sort of harnesses the organs and he gets eyes.
Yeah.
My eyes!
Yeah,
It's
oh.
my eyes! It's horrible.
No.
When he's harvesting the organs off all of those guys. And
Oh
all of
yeah,
it
and he
takes
sucks
their
them dry,
time,
and you see the
it's
silhouette.
Horrifying.
Someone wrote in and was like, "I have to suggest The Mummy purely for the moment where Brendan Fraser throws a chair at Benny. He comes in, he picks up a chair by the leg of the Fraser.
Benny! Looks like you're on the wrong side of the river. There's this fantastic moment when Benny meets he's about to get killed by the mummy, and on his necklace is like every religious symbol, and he has got no idea what this demon belongs to, and he's just holding all of them up, praying in like 7 different languages, and the way in which he's like, no, it's like desperate, and then he holds the Hebrew one, and the mummy's like, oh. The language of the slaves. You can be mine. It's just really playful and funny with religion of someone who's just like a parasite who'll do anything.
Yeah, he is. He's such an interesting character, Benny.
Yeah.
Sort of cockroach. Terminator 2. Some of these films are so big and so iconic. There's like, what else can we say about Terminator 2 other than landmark film with landmark special effects, brilliant. In terms of a rebrand of the Terminator film, it's interesting because the first one's good, but it's very much dark, grounded in kind of like a B-movie crime, slightly exploitation film.
It feels smaller.
It is smaller, and it's all set at night.
I'd love to see T2 in the cinema.
Oh,
Again,
I
like
rewatched
time,
that at Christmas recently.
Oh, great.
It's just when he flips the shotgun, he can revolve it around his hand. The whole aqueduct
bit is just iconic.
Fantastic.
I think that is the aqueduct movie reference. Like
I was supposed to
like Grease.
Oh sure.
But to me, like when you think about aqueduct, I think motorbike Terminator 2.
When you said that, all I could think of is in the Life of Brian, where they're like, "What have the Romans ever done for us?" Like the aqueduct.
Aqueducts?
What do you mean? Or the clean water? And the aqueduct. Fair enough. The aqueduct was pretty good. Jurassic Park.
Well, one of my favorite films. We kind of talk about it a lot. I think it is one of the best representations of Spielberg's magic as a filmmaker. It's summer blockbuster. The best visual effects I think you'll find in cinema. Period. Live in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. That moment when the T-Rex breaks through the electric fence and howls and screams, I think looks as good as basically most of the stuff Marvel's doing right now.
Yeah.
It really, really is very good. And they know when to cut to the close-ups of the practical heads. It's fantastic. It's such a clean, tidy, nipped and tucked film. I love how easily you can bite that film out into little chunks and enjoy it. The 3 main casts are just brilliant. It's smart.
In a way, what I like about the drama and the action of Jurassic Park is that it's so well choreographed, almost like gameplay design is now. So it's like they're in the truck, the T-Rex's thing comes through, it breaks the roof shield,
Mirror shot.
the under thing. Then you got to, and then with the raptors in the kitchen, it's like you got to crawl now to this section here. They're going to open the door over there. It is so well timed.
The camera movement as well between scenes of dialogue, where it moves, where it spins, who it comes across, how it zooms in, what has to happen at the exact moment in time. It's totally lost on you because that's what really good filmmaking is. You don't realize the camera work is really assisting the story. So good.
And then obviously on the flip side, then Spielberg bringing out Schindler's List next year, the birth of that kind of different part of Spielberg's career. Also Saving Private Ryan, doing very well. I will give a shout out actually just to Shakespeare in Love, which is one of my dad's favourite films, which actually is a very nice movie and very fun, and people often give it bad credit. Ben Affleck in there. I've got Scream. We've talked about one of the best opening scenes of all time.
I think it had a resurgence as well. Would have been seen as a cheesy film, but I think it's really aged well.
Funny and scary. That's why it works, because the thrills and the chills work
Watch
together.
the opening scene any day of the week and you'll have fun. It's something like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Like I mentioned, saying Shakespeare in Love made me think about that. Iconic, a real cult classic.
And again, a fresh idea of how to blend sort of a different. You've got a prestigious text over here, seen it as old and stuffy. How to bring it to a new audience with kind of MTV stylings.
Really making a elevated star of Leonardo DiCaprio, who was not only great, but he was showing that he could do Shakespeare and do it well.
Heat. Talked about it loads of times. Iconic, fantastic, a bloody good movie, an all-timer.
Fargo,
good
doing
Coen
that
brothers.
sound game thing the other day. It really reminded me. Just like seeing clips of it, I was like, oh god, yeah, I really want to rewatch this. It's a really great movie, really, really fun.
Silence of the Lambs, we mentioned it. We talked about
Fantastic,
Longlegs as well. Like really, really great. People forget that this is a 90s movie because it came out in 1990, but Goodfellas, again, an all-timer. It's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
What else can we say?
Similarly, Casino. I watched that, I want to say, just
Yeah.
over a year ago, and I had a very good time with it.
I think I need to rewatch it.
It's really good. It's really good. It's long, and it's
As good as
it's
Goodfellas?
very, very... I think Goodfellas edges it, but if you fancy a real good slice of Scorsese, you can't go wrong with Casino.
Okay.
Like Pesci and De Niro are just fantastic in that.
Obviously, Talented Mr. Ripley.
One of our favourite films.
One of our favourite films.
It's so good. Please see our review of Ripley
Yeah.
and how much that is probably one of the
enjoy
best.
both.
You know,
can
you
enjoy
know what I
both.
love is that there have no battle has been had. No lines are drawn between the two.
No.
We loved Ripley, and it did not take anything away from the talented Mr. Ripley.
And lastly, a film we have mentioned sort of, I think, a couple of times recently. I think we had a sound game about it and we talked to someone on Film Bites about it. But this is up there. So The Matrix and Pulp Fiction were definitely the big two. And there was a third film that was also got mentioned a lot.
Can I guess?
Yes, you may.
Is it animated?
No.
Oh, okay, fine.
It is 10 Things I Hate About You.
Oh.
And I love the legs that film has. That film has still been able to...
It's like rom-coms really do have to fight for their right to exist on these lists. Don't know why, but you don't get them easily. It's hard to get on there, and it's always fantastic to see one sitting there. It's really, really good. I'd love to rewatch it.
Oh, I watched it last year, rewatched it last year, and because you have Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and David Krumholtz and just
adorable
this really
Gordon-Levitt.
That must be Nigel with the brie.
Yeah.
So many great throwaway lines. I love that so much. I mean, Clueless people often said as well, but 10 Things I Hate About You up there for me.
I was just going to say, on animated films, The Lion King.
Yes.
Think about the lasting impact of The Lion King, how much that has basically become the most iconic Disney animation and held up as one of the greats. I think that often is separate to the rest as not just a film for kids. It is enjoyed universally by everyone. Cue stage shows, cue live action, technically remakes. And then Toy Story.
Toy Story.
How forget?
Groundbreaking. And Toy Story 2.
And Toy Story 2 in the same decade. Birth of Pixar, the 3D animation style that we have popularized in literally every single film owes their career to Toy Story.
Yeah.
And what an ingenious concept as well. I always feel like we're so used to the idea. Like, you know, we talk about Inside Out being ingenious. I really think Toy Story, the idea that when you leave the room, the toys in your bedroom
come alive,
are running around doing a whole thing. I just think that's fantastic and so well realized.
And the way that franchise was able to then grow and develop in a way that it retained its audience because it was about growing up, about
and Toy Story
experience.
3 really works if you're not a kid. It's really mature and it plays on the idea that you left your toys alone and you didn't go back to them and they waited and wanted to be played. It's just tragic.
If you see some of the original test animation footage they did for Toy Story, it's a little bit creepier, it's a little bit nastier, and they really had to hone it down. And it reminds me, actually, when we talked about The Truman Show earlier, the script for The Truman Show was a lot darker, much more science fiction-y than the film we get. And Peter Weir kind of took it and said, we need to make this a bit more of a satire, a bit more shoot it in daylight, make it a bit more lighter so people can really access this thing as a playful thing. But yes, Toy Story and Toy Story 2, I think, because we said this recently, great trilogy, one of the greatest film trilogies of all time. But probably the second one, does that have the biscuit?
I think it...
Does that have the chocolate finger?
I think it does.
Yeah.
I would happily take either of them.
Stinky Pete,
if I'm
Bullseye,
to rank
Jesse.
them, it's kind of like ranking Star Wars
2,
4,
3,
5,
1.
and 6. 2, 3, 1.
Yeah, I think I'd say 2, 3, 1.
I think so. You know what's tech-wise? When you obviously lighting, you have to create your own lighting in a digital realm, and they have to. Originally, they didn't have this technology, which is very popular today, and it's even popular now in video games, called ray tracing, where you essentially direct a beam of light, and it through technology bounces around a room without you really having to direct it. It's like natural lighting that bounces, whereas before you had to intentionally light things and paint in light, and now it's a really resource-intensive task. You can go, I'm going to put a light here, and your software automatically fills the space and wraps around faces. And it means that you get really great shimmers in eyes and reflections that are off camera or behind the scene are still actually creating a light in the room. It's all these things they get to do with like 2, 3, and 4, which they couldn't do with 1. And it makes 1 more impressive when you understand what they were doing in a 3D space.
So I feel like
and the computers that they made it on, like the old CRT screens with boxy things, like compared to like massive monitors now, it's just brilliant.
I think that's the thing. In the 90s, you're getting just things breaking through. I mean, you get this with every decade, but it's nice to see that things that we've taken for so, the whether it's the dinosaur CGI in Jurassic Park, whether it's the independent filmmaking with Tarantino and the others, it's just like, and with Toy Story, with animation, it's just, this is really, things are really changing.
It was 3D graphics happened in the 90s.
Well, also the 90s was a huge technological, as an era outside of filmmaking, just a huge era of, and the internet. That was the decade of the internet.
Hey, I think a fax in the 90s and noughties is a really amazing thing to happen. It's like, you're going to send me a message and my printer will print it. Magic. Yeah. Magic.
Why is it called a fax?
Oh.
Because it stands for facsimile, which is a reproduction of something, which is it's from like olden times, where it's like, oh, this is the original and this is a facsimile we've made.
Fantastic.
And then facsimile, which is FACS, they then just shortened it to fax.
So techie, so Silicon Valley.
Also, when you just mentioned The Lion King,
we're calling it a fax.
Other good, not that I've seen a lot of Disney films, but I will also, we mentioned Aladdin and Mulan as well.
Yeah, love
Throw it in there.
I went through a phase as a kid where I watched Aladdin every single night.
Just the last few ones I want to give a shout out to. So we mentioned Speed. My Cousin Vinny. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Joe Pesci, Marissa Tomei. Very funny, very sharp. Also Independence Day. Another good, solid actioner.
God, do you remember the sequel? That's a forgotten film
No one
for today.
remembers the sequel.
Resurrection?
No, Insurgents, wasn't it? Independence Day, Resurgence. It's a mixture of Insurgents and Resurrection. It's Resurgence.
Resurgence, 2016. Wow. No one remembers that film with Liam.
Crap.
I really like the guy from Independence Day who's like, oh my God.
Harvey Fierstein.
He's got such a distinct, like, what are we going to do?
He's in Mrs. Doubtfire. So he plays his brother.
Like, yes, he does. He just sounds like he smoked 3 million cigarettes.
He's the one in Mrs.
The mothership, no way.
In Mrs. Doubtfire, like, he gets the face made for him, and he says to his brother, like, do you think you can make me a blonde? And he goes, oh, I don't think I have the strength.
I want to give a shout out to The Sixth Sense. That film really had a strong impact on people. That obviously, like, the famous scene, one of the most famous spoilers in cinema. I wouldn't say it just in case. I remember watching it very young, and I remember there's this really distinct scene when he's at like a kid's. He's playing with a bunch of kids and he gets locked in a room and he's banging to get out. And it's not just because he's been locked, but because he knows there's something in there with him. And you never get to see what's there, but just hearing him bang, like, and you know that he is seeing the absolute horrors. It's just really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just such a quoted film, like, I see dead people.
The peak Shyamalan coming in.
Yeah, peak Shyamalan, yeah.
Also, the best, in my opinion, and my favourite James Bond movie, GoldenEye. Jumping off the dam at the beginning. Brilliant.
Really cool.
You know, what a great little movie
I
that
am
was.
invincible.
And The World Is Not Enough, which comes out in 1999.
The world is not enough.
Not an amazing movie. Tomorrow Never Dies is great.
Tomorrow Never Dies, I don't remember
Do you
very
remember
well.
the motorbike chase with they're handcuffed together on the white BMW bike through?
I've only seen it.
I think it's through
a long time ago.
Hong Kong, and that's when they did it in Mission Impossible, the most recent one, where they're handcuffed together. I was like, that's taking that a little bit. But The World Is Not Enough, just because do you not remember the opening chase where the money blows up?
Yes, yeah.
And he gets on the
ties
boat.
it to the guy, and then he jumps out the window with the suitcase.
Yes, and then he jumps on and he's in the boat, and he lands on the Millennium Dome.
Yeah.
And it was all just like cool Britannia era.
He had the blue glasses that.
And it's all about oil. Great
really
PS1. Cool. I think maybe in a PS1 game that I got with that.
Oh yeah, there was a PS1 game.
Anyway, that is just such a breadth of many films that came out in the 90s. Obviously, yeah, it goes without saying. We're going to get comments being like, you didn't mention this.
We've been going for over an hour, so yeah.
Guys, it's a whole decade, but I really enjoyed this particular era.
Me too. I've enjoyed talking about it a lot.
Because also I think, because we didn't go to the cinema to see these films, these are the ones we've actively had to seek out as we've got into film.
They weren't marketed to us.
They weren't marketed to us, but they had actors in it who were still in films that we were watching as we were growing up.
Yeah, totally. It was great, really great decade.
We'd love to hear. I mean, you can tell us what we've missed out. Every time we do this, we get emails being like, "What about this?"
Out this? I'm like, well, of course, that film.
It's a whole decade.
Yeah, so as always, guys, if you wanted to send in your 90s recommendations, your reviews, your thoughts, your concerns, please send them in to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. Or if you support us at the VIP tier on Patreon, you can get priority access to get your email read out on the show. But with that is a nice trilogy of decades.
Yes, we are interested in going back further in time, but we're going to take a little break, maybe think about how we do that as a format.
Should we go through some of the emails?
Let's go through some emails.
That was the 1990s.
James, shall we read some of the emails that have come out, or come in, rather? Films come out, emails come in. That's the industrial process that is our show. This first email is from Josh, who writes in and says, "Hi, James and George. Josh, a long-term siren from Cambridgeshire, writing in here.
Nice.
Just been listening to your episodes about the best movies of the decade.
Thank
This
you.
is in reference, I think, to the 2010s one, but obviously we've done 3 of them now.
Are now, by some metrics on certain platforms, our most listened to episode, and the Naughties one has already got great numbers. So glad to hear that you guys enjoy.
We will
these.
probably be doing more.
Yeah.
You mentioned about perhaps making this a series, going back to the 1930s. Love this idea, as I'm currently doing a 100 Years of Cinema challenge myself.
Fantastic.
The rules are to watch a film from each year, 1924 to 2024, that I've never seen before. So you have to see a film you've never seen before,
Oh, okay.
one from each year, okay? That's quite an undertaking.
And also really hard
100 films,
to
100 new
decide, because
films.
there'll be some great years where you're like, yeah, that's cool.
My movie knowledge only really vaguely extends back to the 70s, so wanted to do this to unearth some of those golden oldies that I've never got round to watching. At the time of writing, I have made it to the late 30s. Some of my favourite films so far include Sherlock Jr., 1924, The Passion of Joan of Arc, 1928,
Wow.
and M, 1931. And unfortunately, some films I couldn't get on with but could appreciate: Metropolis, 1927, and Man with a Movie Camera, 1929. Anyway, back to the question. Are there any films pre-1970s that you guys think are a must-watch for me? Here's a link to my Letterboxd. Okay, thank you. The pod has by far become my favourite podcast, so thank you for your consistently great work. P.S. I am sort of cheating with 2024, as I really wanted to finish the challenge with Babylon. I feel it sort of works as a perfect full circle for this movie. For the movie, yeah, it does kind of work for that. In terms of like films that you should watch pre-1970s, well, we will probably do that.
We'll probably do it.
We will answer that question, but like when we get to those decades.
Yeah.
We have offhandedly remember. Some people have asked in the past about good old movies, and we have.
That's such a vague term. What is old?
What is old to some
Some
people?
might be like old 20s.
Was it
is
with
old.
you I was talking about, or somebody else, and they said they have a friend and they don't watch any film
You
pre
mentioned it to me.
2012?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it to me, and I
Which is
reacted
insane.
very. Yeah, that's mad.
And some people I know might not watch film
2012
pre 2000.
because-
I don't know.
Why 2012?
I don't know. Maybe 2010.
They our age.
I think so. I don't know. I can't actually remember who told me this.
Yeah. It's almost more annoying than people who are like, I just don't like movies, they're long and boring. That's almost worse.
Do you know who said that in an interview recently?
Who?
Millie Bobby Brown.
Oh.
Not to publicly call her out. I'm so sorry, but I did find it slightly bizarre that someone who's a very big
Makes
talent
movies.
and then said, movies, if it's too long, I can't bother.
That is really offensive.
And,
you literally are in the most privileged position where you get to be around people making films, and you're like, a bit long though, aren't they?
Yeah. So
Even your
Soul
TV
Silly.
show is like feature length.
Yeah, it's
Stranger Things is long now.
Yeah,
and the
that-
intention is to make for the last series. Correct me if I'm wrong. They want to continue that like 90-minute episode.
Yeah, each
structure.
episode was like 90. Yeah, it's
So,
insane.
your thing is longer than any of them.
And we have
That's
to wait.
so annoying.
We have to wait 2-3 years in between each one as well.
I think by the way, I think I'll watch Stranger Things to be caught up for the last season. I
You've
think
got loads of time.
I've got a lot. Yeah, and I've got loads of time.
Oh,
to do it.
because I also think I'll rewatch season 4. It's fun. It's watchable.
Yeah, for another day. This next email is from Daniel, who writes in and says, "Good day, chaps. I thoroughly enjoy your podcast, and I'm writing to highlight an aspect of that enjoyment that may be somewhat unusual. Sometimes we may disagree on matters of taste, but the challenges to my thinking presented by these subjective and possibly age-related differences do actually add to the experience. It's refreshing and reinvigorating to hear a new generation discuss film in your amiable and knowledgeable manner.
Thank you.
Whiplash is a particular example.
Go on.
I caught it casually on a long-haul flight many moons ago. It had remained under my radar ever since. To now hear the unwavering reverence it is given on Pulp Kitchen is really rather shocking. If it were grouped into a 2010s NYC performing arts psych trilogy with Black Swan and Birdman, it would be The Godfather Part 3 at best, and could easily be relegated to Crystal Skull status if we expanded the time window. Perhaps I will rewatch Vive la Défense, Daniel.
Yeah, you should rewatch it because you're wrong.
It's good.
Just gonna put that right there. Birdman is a overhyped piece of wank in my opinion, with some moments of fun, good stuff in it. Don't get me wrong, but I think Birdman.
I don't think it's negatively about it. I see your point. I
Yeah.
think there are a lot of very indulgent moments, but I think there's parts of it which are really well done.
But Whiplash, come on,
Whiplash
man.
is cool.
Don't watch. Just 5-year rule. When was the last time you watched it? It was over 5 years ago. For that, do you know what? For our new
Many moons ago
I'm
is
just
what
going to
we
say, because we have had some new listeners join us, so
Yeah.
I will just say the 5-year rule thing
Yeah.
is this thing I have, which
Which is
is that-
unsustainable, but anyway. Well, it's hard. You can't just be constantly rewatching everything from 5 years ago.
I think it's more to bear in
I
mind.
like it, though.
It's that basically any opinion that you have about a film is really only valid for 5 years. So if you come to me and say, oh, I didn't really like Whiplash, and I said, when did you see it? They go, oh, about 8 years ago. And I'm like, chances are you have changed, and the way that film presents itself has also changed. So I guarantee that if you watch that now, that film might be different. It might be better, could be worse, but I want people to bear in mind, because I've spoken to some people and they go, oh, yeah, I saw that, thought it was rubbish. When did you see it? About 30 years ago. I think, I think it might have been different now, and you have changed as a person as well.
You've
so
aged.
it'll be open to that. So 5-year rule. This next email is from Sydney, who writes in and says, Dear James and George, I've been listening to the pod for quite a while now, and I've been absolutely hooked from the start. Again, I like the idea that it's hooking.
I will just say,
a serial killer podcast.
I did like that Daniel sort of embraced the differences.
Oh,
in
yes.
his email.
I'm sorry,
He
Daniel.
came in with the difference, but we also I love that you don't have to agree with every opinion you listen to, but nonetheless, opinions to hear are enjoyable.
They are, and I was being very flippant and jokingly coming back
yeah.
and saying you should rewatch it. But you should. But of course, it's a broad church. Everyone's welcome.
Love it.
Sydney says, I've been listening to the pod for quite a while now, and I've been absolutely hooked from the start. You mentioned in the latest episode that you'd like to hear what we do for a living.
Yes, love it.
I work as a labour and delivery nurse on the night shift, and I must thank you both for accompanying me back and forth to work each night. That's a tough gig. Good for you. Side note, in my hospital's laboratory, there is a walk-in refrigerator that we store lab samples in. Someone has hung a giant headshot of Christopher Walken on the door, cleverly naming it the Christopher Walken fridge.
Good.
None of my co-workers seem to get the joke, let alone find it clever. But every time I see it, I think to myself, George and James would get it. We absolutely would. Wow,
perfect.
it's the Walken fridge. I've been listening to your episodes in reverse order, sort of memento style.
Yeah, very good.
And I am almost all the way through your back catalogue.
When I execute George in episode 1, it is all going to make sense.
I just finished listening to episode 10, where you guys were discussing Jaws. God, that's just thrown me back through the sands of
It's
time.
in black and white.
I felt compelled to write in. I live in a small town in Massachusetts, and my family and I love to visit Martha's Vineyard every summer, which is where Jaws was filmed. Also, you have italicized Jaws, which I really like and
Convenient,
respect. I have even jumped off of Jaws Bridge many times, where the shark in the canal scene was formed. We have also made it a 4th of July weekend tradition to have an outdoor movie night with family and friends to watch Jaws.
Nice.
This sounds great. This sounds so. Can we come?
Yeah.
There are so many iconic scenes and quotes in that film. And for us, they never get old. My question to you both is, do either of you have any... Well, she touches on something we have talked about. Do either of you have any summertime film traditions, or perhaps films you just enjoy watching every summer? Thank you very much. Thank you for everything you guys do. I truly love this podcast and look forward to new episodes each week. Keep up the great work. Sydney from Massachusetts.
Thank you very much.
Sydney.
Well, we did seasonal. We covered seasonal things the other day when someone asked about
summer
autumn.
films and spring films and that.
But like actual sort of rituals is a good question for the summer.
When I first watched the Before films, I used to try and watch this every summer because it was very sort of Europe, going on a city break kind of thing. I used to watch the trip. I used to rewatch a lot of episodes of the trip to Italy in summertime. Similar thing.
But like actual rituals of things, of practices, and it's a good question.
I would love to go to more outdoor. Well, we live in the UK, so it's very, very hard. But
I do like to go to the cinema in the summer holidays in inverted commas. Like I do have a lot of fond memories of going as 11, 12 years old, going to the cinema with friends.
But have you done more outdoor stuff like the ones at King's Cross? Like, have you ever watched
I
stuff there?
have. I think I once saw an outdoor screening of Lost in Translation, which was quite cool.
Okay.
It was like a branded thing. Yeah. It was like a sort of it was like sponsored by Asahi beer.
Oh,
Japanese beer. Yeah.
Thank you, Sydney, for that email.
This next one is from Felix, friend of the show. It says, hi guys. First of all, congratulations on this new Patreon chapter of the Pulp Kitchen adventure. Really good to see the podcast grow, and I've no doubt will continue to do so with the quality content you keep putting out. Thank you very much. I was just listening to the Double Take episode about sci-fi flops. Guys, as always, if you wanted to go and check out our brand new exclusive Patreon podcast, please go and check out our Patreon where you can listen to Double Take.
We're deep into the Double Takes now as well. We've got like 8 locked in there.
I really enjoy them. Yeah, it's great.
It's
go and check it out. The episode talking about sci-fi flops, and it got me thinking about the opposite. Films that did well commercially and critically with very small budget. Primer and The Blair Witch Project immediately came to mind, but I was wondering if you knew of any more recent examples. One of my all-time favorites is Coherence from 2013. a very underrated and mind-bending sci-fi film, which was produced for a mere $50,000 and allegedly shot on as little as 5 days. Besides the fact that it explores quantum physics through the medium of a suburban dinner party, I really like it because it reminds us that you don't need a multi-million-dollar budget to come up with a good storyline. Quite refreshing in an age where overproduced big-budget films seem to be becoming the norm, especially in genres like sci-fi. Look forward to hearing your thoughts and keep up the good work. Best, Felix. P.S. My contribution to the Where to Go Out in Brighton discussion would have been Dead Wax Social, small venue in the North Lane, one of the few places you could go to late at night that wasn't full-blown club.
Yes, I've been to Dead Wax Social, and this was when we talked about Brighton clubs. Yeah, it used to be more of a club, and then they turned a bit more into a bar.
Yeah.
Went there.
Yes.
Low budget.
Paranormal Activity famously
Activity,
made for don't quote me on this, I think like 10 or 15 grand, and then is one of the most profitable film ever.
It's hard because I'm trying to think of, there's loads of low budget films I've seen, but in terms of actually ones that convert to major.
Whiplash was low budget.
Yeah, that was low budget.
Not sci-fi though.
Budget films box.
The Creator, which didn't do well, was lower budget considering it's that's sci-fi and it wasn't mad budget. Like it was shot on FX3, which is the most interesting thing about that film.
I mean, it's all like slightly contextual because like a quick Google just now has told me that Five Nights with Freddy's, although a terrible film, made for $20 million, took nearly $300 million.
Yeah.
But low budget one in this context, I mean, as like maybe tops $1 million.
Yeah. Horror still has a very strong place in cinemas. But it does endure. You see comic books, big sci-fi, event films, your Oscars, and then loads of horror.
I think
we cover horror a lot.
I think horror is it kind of is the most secure, not that there is a secure way, but if you are a director wanting to break into the film industry, one of the best way to do it is to make a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because a low budget horror movie, because as we talked about before on the show, you can you can execute horror very, very well on a low budget, if done very well. I mean, Blair Witch is obviously the example, and then very cheaply that can be bought by a studio and distributed at large and become a huge hit.
Talk to Me made for $4.5 million.
Not bad.
That's like, no, not sci-fi. Midsummer made for $9 million. I'm going to check.
I still think that like,
yeah,
9 million is
that's still cheap. Like Florence Pugh's in that film. Hereditary 10. Sinister made for $3 million. Not amazing. The Witch made for $4 million.
A lot of the Blumhouse stuff was probably made for quite low. That's their
industrial. That's so profitable.
Their industrial model.
If they can make a film for less than 10 mil,
and it brings in five times that at least.
Yeah, that's really good going.
Yeah. Those were the emails we had today on the show. Thank you very much for everyone who wrote in. And again, just a reminder that we are recording this a little bit out of time. So if there are things you've sent in and we haven't read it out right now,
come back next week.
Come back next week. And just a reminder, of course, that we have crossed a point now with the show that thankfully we get in loads of emails every week. We're so thankful. Great. But just a reminder that because of that, we can't read out all emails all the time because they come in. Unless, of course, you are a member of the VIP or producer tiers of the Patreon, in which case you do get priority access to have your email read out, as long as the emails are about, relevant, about film and stuff. Just remember that. But James, shall we send this off with a nice game?
Let's do it. Not enough, and it is such a perfect place. So my girls dancing.
Sung by who sung the theme tune?
Oh,
For What's Not Enough.
I don't know.
Garbage. No, the band is called Garbage. That does sound like something I'd say, like absolute garbage.
Arseholes.
Hi, we are terribly awful. This is our new single. Okay, James, we have another round of the sound game.
Let's do it.
As you know, guys, play along at home. I'm going to play James a clip from a movie that's a couple of seconds long, and some of them have dialogue, some of them don't, and you have to guess from that sound what movie they come from. We've gone for a real mixture here.
Okay.
James, are you ready for your first sound?
Yes.
Guess the movie from the sound.
1, 2, 3. Toast.
Mission Impossible 1.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
I knew you'd get that.
We reference that a lot.
Every time we set up the
sound.
microphones, yep.
And it's because he's testing he's going into the chamber and he's testing how loud he can be for the iconic flipping suspension.
We didn't even talk about Mission Impossible today.
Typing on the computer.
Yeah.
Great.
Are you ready for your next sound? Guess the movie from the sound.
Is it Predator?
It is,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very easy one, distinctive.
Really?
The sound of the... It's
I
creepy.
heard that in the back of my brain.
Yeah, it's really kind of gut primal, animalistic. One more time.
Yes, please. Horrible.
And I
It's
actually
really
think
horrible.
with A Quiet Place, it owes a little bit. You know, in the creatures in A Quiet Place are like...
Yeah.
And even like The Last of Us with the clickers.
Click it 100%.
Owes something to that. Yeah. Ugh. Well done, James.
Really, really good.
Are you ready for your next sound?
Ready for the next sound?
Guess the movie from the sound.
These guys are pros. You thinking what I'm thinking, partner? Aim for the bushes.
Oh.
So, there's a lot going on there. There's some music behind it. You definitely know this film.
Yeah, it's the music was taking me back. Just one more time.
These guys are pros. You thinking what I'm thinking, partner? Aim for the bushes.
The other guys.
That's right.
There goes my hero.
With-
They do a really weird thing with how they fall, which looks really cheap, but it's like a cheap fake fall, but they hit the ground really quickly.
Yeah. It's good at tricking you into thinking something's going to happen, and then just at the last minute.
just letting
so
them
it's
fall.
Dwayne Johnson and Samuel Jackson playing, the guys who aren't the other guys on top of the building, thinking they can make the leap, and that's what they say.
Free hot dogs for life. No drinks. Can't do it. Can't do it. It's really unhinged. You're like, why would they? Later, they're like, why the hell would they make that jump? The bushes were so far
I know.
away.
I think honestly, the first time I saw that, I didn't laugh because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. 'Cause the
It's
bushes are
really
there.
good. The other guys is really funny.
I tried to
Michael
get-
Keaton's hilarious
Yeah,
in that.
I tried to get other sounds from that film because I know you reference it
Yeah,
quite a
yeah.
lot, but I couldn't get. They were too obvious. I
The
just thought I'd
best
give
is
that.
the fight at the funeral when they're all like, I'm gonna fucking... And then Michael Keaton breaks up. It's like, what the hell is going on? 2 officers are dead. You guys are fucking fighting off the scraps. I'm the winner. It's so good. So good.
Very good, James. Well done. 3
All right,
down.
3 for 3.
More to go. Are you ready for your next sound?
I'm ready.
Guess the movie from the sound.
Can you find the wolves in this picture?
All right, let's go. Come on.
That's Killers of the Flower Moon.
That's right. That's
Can you...
Burkhart, Ernest Burkhart.
What are you investigating?
That is Killers of the Flower Moon.
Who's doing them?
Yeah. Yeah. What he's like, I want to
So
talk about
Jesse
these
Plemons, that
murders. What about them? Well, who's doing them?
Who's doing the murdering? So Plemons, just very like casual. I'm a normal guy.
What that clip reminds me of about Killers of the Flower Moon, one of our favourite films from last year, is that it's this kind of constant pace that the film has that you have Leonardo DiCaprio's character reading the book about the Osage history, reading this pictorial metaphor about can you spot the wolves in this picture, while at the same time you're shown different clips of Osage history, and then the soundtrack that comes in, the guy comes in at the end, says, come on, let's go. They then go and mug someone, and it's this constant feeling of a montage that before you know it, 45 minutes of the film have gone past,
I remember
and it just shrinks that 3.5 hour runtime.
I remember describing the pacing as calming like a metronome. It was like really steady hand filmmaking.
2 more.
Yep.
I think these are going to be a little bit harder for you. But I think at the moment you're on a roll.
Okay, let's do it.
Are you ready for your next sound? Guess the movie from the sound.
Water. Real intense screechy score. Old film from the 80s, 90s, 70s. 70s film. Can I hear it one more time, please?
Listen to what's happening.
No, go on.
That is the scene in Carrie when the pig's blood is dropped
Not
on
seen
her
Carrie.
at the bride. But you know the scene, right?
Yeah.
So, and I thought maybe even if you don't know it, so the sound you're hearing is the blood coming down, hitting her, and she's getting covered, and then there's the reaction of the audience go, Carrie is a
Right.
really, I only watched it for the first time quite recently. It still holds up.
Yeah.
It's a little bit dated. It's very, very 70s. Everyone's got crazy hair. It's got a supporting John Travolta performance in it, pre-Grease and everything.
Fantastic.
But when the shit kicks off after that moment with the
Yeah.
pig's blood, it's
famous.
pretty cool.
Fantastic. Love it.
Okay, similarly, James.
Yep.
Look, we do this every week, the sound game. So we got to, branch out and even make
get
it a little
weird.
bit- Yeah,
Get weird.
absolutely. So I don't know if you've seen this film. I've not even seen it. But this, again, this moment is very, very famous and very iconic. Are you ready for your next sound? Are you ready for your final sound?
Ready for the final sound.
Guess the movie from the sound.
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
Michael Caine.
Correct.
Italian Job.
Yes. Yeah. The ending of The Italian Job. Very famous. Have you seen The Italian Job?
Half of it.
Yeah.
Not properly.
I've seen the
Mark
Edward
Wahlberg,
Norton.
2003. I don't think it's that bad.
No, I don't either.
No,
but this
I
is
think some people would say that's sacrilege for us to say it's not that bad.
Yeah. This is the iconic, I mean, literally iconic 1960s, three Mini Coopers, Michael Caine, cool
Hang on a minute,
60s
lad.
film.
Yeah.
And I've not even seen it, but everyone knows that ending.
I think my granddad was watching it on TV, and I think I've stayed for like 40 minutes, but not watched it properly.
I don't know how it viewed. I don't know how thrilling or entertaining it is now, but it's just one more time for the great Michael Caine.
Great Michael Caine. Hang on a minute, lads.
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
That needle drop is so 60s as well.
And I just thought, when I was kind of getting into film when I was younger, even though I've not seen that, everyone would always talk about one of the great endings or one of the most famous movie endings, which I don't think it's bad to spoil necessarily, because I don't think anyone, unless you're a deep 60s Cool Britannia aficionado, you need to go and watch that. But swinging 60s London, that's what I mean. It's kind of, you see the same thing.
Don't know. It was us.
You got 6 out of 7.
6 out of 7.
No, sorry, 5 out of 6.
5 out of
You got
6.
5 out of 6 there. Well done.
Fantastic. Is that everything?
That concludes the game today, and that concludes our episode today.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pulp Kitchen. We really appreciate you spending our time with us. Don't forget, new episodes of this show come out every single Wednesday.
And a big thank you to our producers, Aidan and Finn, as well, who support us on this show. Thank you very much for that. And don't forget, you guys, we mentioned it throughout the show, but our Patreon. Our new show that we do, the Double Take, every week, talking about things in a deeper dive. We talk about news, new trailers, things like that. It's really fun and exciting. And other than that, continue to please follow us and support us on social media, and share our clips, and like and comment and subscribe, and tell your mum and tell your priest and tell your vicar and other denominations, and tell your milkman and tell your postman.
Another call to action for teachers, professors, people in positions of authority in the realm of education.
Yes.
Indoctrinate the young.
Yes.
Required reading. Make it oblige them to listen to us.
Anyone who has anything to do with a budget for a marketing podcast sponsorship, please get in touch or pass it along. Or if you know anyone connected in Hollywood, do the same.
We said a lot of bad things about Rich Tea biscuits, but hey, I could have a Rich Tea sponsor.
I'd wear
a narrative.
I would wear a Rich Tea t-shirt for the whole year if I was paid the right amount.
What a narrative to convert us.
Yes.
Show us, come on, Rich Tea. Get involved.
Here's what we missed about Rich Tea biscuits.
What is the who will be the big farmer that owns McVitie's? Will it be like Nestle or Mars?
Well, that's a good question. I did not own themselves. You think there's some sort of conglomerate out
Obviously,
in Germany?
It's all owned by BlackRock or someone, but like there's like Procter and Gamble, and Nestle and Nabisco, like who owns McVitie's? It can't. They must be owned by someone.
Maybe.
Big biscuit. Big biscuit.
Big biscuit's trying to muscle in on our
At
action.
that level, it's like just consumables. They'll do soap and detergent and food, and all the chemicals will
It's
be
all
the same.
Johnson and Johnson.
Yes, exactly. Johnson and Johnson. Anyway, yes. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for listening.
See you next
I hope
week.
you're having a wonderful summer. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.